All right, get ready. Because we're tackling a question today, a really interesting one that you sent in. Can you actually reverse diabetes?
It's a question we get a lot, and this article you shared from Women's Health Taiwan really digs into it. It gets pretty fascinating.
Yeah, I thought so too. I mean, just the idea that you could potentially reverse diabetes, especially type 2, feels almost too good to be true, right?
It would be amazing if it were a simple fix, but it's definitely not a magic cure. What we're learning, though, is that in the early stages, like with prediabetes or even type 2, when it's caught early, there is a real possibility of getting blood sugar back to a healthy range, maybe even without meds.
Okay, so no magic, got it, but still, pretty hopeful. Before we get too deep into the whole reversing thing, though, let's do a quick level set. The article does a nice job explaining the basics of diabetes, that there are two main types.
Right, and it's important to know the difference because, well, the causes and treatments are pretty different too. Type 1 diabetes is autoimmune, meaning your immune system is actually attacking those cells in your pancreas that make insulin.
So basically, people with type 1 need those insulin injections because their body isn't making enough, right?
Exactly. Now, type 2, that's way more common, develops a bit differently. Often, it's linked to lifestyle, and it involves this concept of insulin resistance. The article mentions that.
Insulin resistance. Okay, break that down for me a bit. What is that exactly, and why is it such a big deal?
Think of it this way. Insulin is like a key that unlocks your cells, so glucose, sugar from food, can get in and be used for energy. Insulin resistance, well, it's like those locks get rusty. That key doesn't work so well anymore. So glucose builds up in your blood instead of going into the cells. That's what sets the stage for prediabetes and eventually type 2.
Ah, okay. Makes sense. And then you start to see those, the classic diabetes symptoms, right? Like always thirsty, peeing a lot, feeling totally wiped out, even blurry vision. The article lists them all.
Yep, those symptoms are all connected to that glucose buildup in your bloodstream. Your body's essentially trying to get rid of the excess sugar, and, well, that's how it shows up sometimes.
Interesting. Makes total sense. But, there were a few risk factors in the article that I wasn't so familiar with. Like, it mentioned a history of gestational diabetes or even giving birth to a larger baby. More risk for type 2. I'm curious about that.
Those are actually really important points, and they often don't get as much attention. So gestational diabetes is the kind that happens during pregnancy. Usually it goes away after delivery. But it's a sign that your body had some trouble regulating blood sugar while you were pregnant. And that can actually increase your risk for type 2 later on. As for having a larger baby, well, sometimes that can mean your blood sugar was higher than ideal during pregnancy, which, again, could up your risk for diabetes in the future.
Huh. So even if it was years ago, those things are still relevant to your overall risk.
Definitely. It's all part of your health history. Understanding these connections can help you be more, well, proactive, right?
Proactive, that's the key. Which I guess is where this whole idea of reversing diabetes comes in. But honestly, can you actually do that? The article seems to think it's possible, at least in the early stages.
It is. Research backs that up. The thing to keep in mind, though, is reversal doesn't mean cured. It means getting those blood sugar levels back to normal without needing medication. Basically, putting the disease into remission. There's a catch, though. It takes commitment. Lifestyle changes, ongoing management, no quick fix, unfortunately.
Gotcha. So no magic pill. It's about making sustainable changes to, well, how to eat, how you move, maybe even how you think about health, huh?
You got it. And you know what? Those changes can really make a difference in how your body responds to insulin, how it regulates blood sugar.
The article digs into diet and exercise, which of course makes sense. Those are kind of the cornerstones of diabetes management. But there was this one tip that caught my eye, and I'm not even sure I totally get it. It was about changing your eating order.
Yeah, that's where things get interesting. They recommend eating your veggies first, then the protein, and lastly, the carbs. You wouldn't think the order would matter that much, but surprisingly, it can really impact your blood sugar.
I'm all ears. Spill the beans. What's the science behind this strategic eating?
Okay, so starting with those fiber-rich veggies, basically you're slowing down your digestion, which means the glucose from the carbs you eat later on gets released into your bloodstream more gradually. A gentler rise in blood sugar instead of like a massive spike, And adding protein in there before the carbs, well, that helps even more to kind of moderate that glucose spike.
So it's like you're creating a more balanced and controlled insulin response. Instead of just flooding your system with sugar all at once, you're giving it time to process things more smoothly.
Exactly. It's all about optimizing how your body handles that glucose and this little tweak to your eating order. well, it can be a surprisingly effective tool.
Wow. It really is amazing how small adjustments can have such a big impact. The article also goes into some common myths about diabetes, which I thought was really helpful. I mean, is it true that cutting out sugar completely can reverse diabetes? And what about fruit? Totally off limits if you have diabetes.
Those are great questions. And, the answers are a bit more nuanced than a simple yes or no. It's not really about eliminating sugar entirely. It's more about, well, moderation and making smart choices.
So not deprivation, but finding a sustainable way to manage blood sugar that actually fits your life, right?
Exactly. You can still enjoy fruit even with diabetes. The key is choosing lower sugar fruits, like berries, and watching those portion sizes. It's all about finding that balance where you can still enjoy the foods you love, but also keep your blood sugar in check.
I like that approach. It feels a lot more realistic and, empowering than some of those super restrictive diets you hear about.
It's about finding what works for you long-term, not just a quick fix.
Well said. This deep dive into this Women's Health Taiwan article is already packed with so much great information. I'm definitely feeling more informed about diabetes and really intrigued by this whole idea that you might actually be able to reverse it with lifestyle changes.
It's definitely possible, especially like we've been talking about for those in the early stages of type 2 or with prediabetes. We could delve even deeper into that in the next part of our deep dive.
So we're going to dig deeper into reversing diabetes, like you said, and I'm ready to get into it. The article really stresses catching things early, especially during that pre-diabetes stage. Why is that?
It's really, really important. Prediabetes is kind of like I guess you could say yellow light. It's a warning sign, right?
Yeah.
Blood sugar is elevated, but not quite high enough to be, officially type 2 diabetes.
Oh, I see. So like a window of opportunity almost, where you can actually turn things around.
Exactly. Hitting a reset button,
Yeah.
Potentially prevent full-blown type 2 from developing.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. But how do you actually hit that reset button? The article talks a lot about lifestyle changes, diet, and exercise, of course, but it also gets into that whole insulin resistance thing, which we talked about before. How do those pieces all fit together?
We're all connected. Remember, we were talking about insulin being like a key.
Yeah.
Unlocks your cells to let glucose in.
Right. And with insulin resistance, it's like the locks get all rusty and the key doesn't work as well.
Exactly. So the glucose builds up in your blood instead of getting into the cells. That's where diet and exercise come in. When you're eating healthy, especially low in those processed foods, sugary drinks, refined carbs, well, you're putting less stress on your insulin system. You're basically giving your cells a better chance to, hear insulin's message and respond better.
So it's not just about cutting out sugar entirely, but making overall better choices.
Right. That's where the glycemic index comes in. You had another article that mentioned this, I think. Worth looking into.
Okay, yeah, I remember that. What's the glycemic index again?
It measures how quickly a food raises your blood sugar. So like foods with a high GI, I think white bread, sugary cereals, potatoes, those cause those rapid spikes in blood sugar. But foods with a low GI, like veggies, beans, whole grains, they release glucose more slowly.
So by choosing low GI foods, you're helping to control those spikes, keep your insulin from, working overtime.
Exactly. It's about balance, making those choices that support those healthy blood sugar levels.
And exercise is part of this too, right? I remember the article saying that physical activity actually makes your cells more sensitive to insulin. How does that work?
It's one of the most powerful tools, honestly. Regular exercise, especially a combo of like aerobic and strength training, can improve insulin sensitivity in a couple of ways. First, it actually increases the number of GLUT4 transporters in your muscle cells. These transporters are like little doorways that let glucose into the cells more efficiently. And second, exercise helps your muscles use up that excess glucose for fuel, so there's less of it circulating in your blood.
So it's like exercise tunes your cells to be more receptive to insulin, and it helps clear out that excess glucose, double win.
Exactly. It's a perfect example of how those lifestyle changes actually, directly affect how your body handles sugar.
Wow, this is really making sense now. Eating better, low GI foods, regular exercise, it all helps reverse that insulin resistance and get those blood sugar levels back to where they should be.
Exactly. And don't forget that eating order tip we talked about before. Veggies first, then protein, then carbs. It can really make a difference.
Right, right. Stacking those strategies. This is all great information, and I'm definitely feeling more empowered. But I think it's important to acknowledge that making these changes isn't always easy, right? I mean, life happens. Habits are hard to break. It can feel overwhelming.
I agree. It's not, a quick fix. It's a journey. It takes effort, consistency. Sometimes it even helps to have support from, healthcare professionals. The article recommends that too.
Makes sense. It's like building a team to help you with the challenges and, figure out what works best for you.
Exactly. Your doctor can really help you understand your situation, create a personalized plan, monitor your progress. And a registered dietitian can help you make those healthy food choices that you'll actually enjoy.
It's like having a personalized roadmap and a support system. I like that. The article also mentions regular blood sugar monitoring, which I guess makes sense.
Super important. Think of it like a gauge on your car's dashboard. You're tracking your progress, seeing how your body's responding to different things. Personalized feedback to help you, fine-tune your approach.
And technology can help with that too, right? There's some pretty cool devices these days that make monitoring easier.
Definitely. Continuous glucose monitors, or CGMs, they've really been a game changer. These small devices, you wear them on your skin, and they're constantly tracking your blood sugar, give you those real-time insights, help you spot patterns and trends. They can even send alerts to your phone and know if your blood sugar is getting too high or too low.
That's amazing, like having a constant companion to keep you on track.
Exactly. And they're not just for people with diabetes, Even if you're pre-diabetic or just curious about how your body responds to different foods, CGMs can give you some valuable information.
It's all about knowledge, right? Empowering yourself and taking an active role.
Couldn't agree more. This whole deep dive is really showing how much control we actually have, especially when it comes to diabetes. Knowledge is power, for sure.
I love that. But before we wrap up this part, I want to shift gears a bit. The article mentions, just briefly, the psychological impact of diabetes. It's not just physical, right? It can be emotional, too.
That's such a good point, and honestly, it's often overlooked. Getting a diagnosis, whether it's pre-diabetes or diabetes, it can be scary, overwhelming, totally natural to feel, all sorts of emotion. Denial, anger, sadness, anxiety.
It's a lot to take in, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally, too. The article talked about getting support. That seems really key.
It is. Managing diabetes, it's not just about the physical stuff. It's your mental and emotional well-being, too. Having a good support system, friends, family, maybe even some online communities, those can make a huge difference.
Yeah, knowing you're not alone, that there are resources and people who get it, that's got to be so helpful. As we've been talking, I keep thinking back to that question we started with. Can you actually reverse diabetes?
Right. And after digging into all this information from these articles, I think the answer is, it's a cautious yes, especially like we said in those early stages.
It's possible. It takes work. But the fact that it might be possible, that's pretty amazing.
It really is. This whole deep dive has shown that diabetes is serious, but it is manageable. And with the right knowledge and action, you might even be able to reverse it.
I'm feeling so much more informed and honestly a lot more empowered too. Hope you are too.
Me too, definitely. And I hope everyone listening feels the same way. Knowledge is power when it comes to our health, that's for sure.
Couldn't agree more. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to bring it back to you. Let's say you're talking to a friend who was just diagnosed with prediabetes or maybe early stage type 2. What's the one piece of advice you'd give them?
I'd tell them to take a deep breath. Don't panic. It's scary getting a diagnosis, but it's not like a life sentence. It's a chance to make some positive changes, really. And even small changes, they can make a big difference in how your body manages blood sugar.
That's so important to hear. And of course, the article also talked about working with healthcare professionals.
Oh, absolutely. Don't try to go it alone. Your doctor can help you figure out your specific situation, what you need to do, and a registered dietitian. They can give you great advice on healthy food choices that you'll actually like.
It's a team effort, right? You don't have to have all the answers yourself.
Right. And remember, this is a journey. It takes time. Some days will be harder than others. Be kind to yourself, celebrate those wins, and learn from any setbacks,
Love that. It's not about being perfect. It's about making progress and finding what works for you long term.
And don't forget about support. talk to people, friends, family, maybe even join a support group. It can make such a difference. Sharing your story, connecting with people who get it, that can be so encouraging.
We're all in this together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, this Women's Health Taiwan article you shared, it's really shown us that diabetes is serious, yes, but it is something we can manage and, hey, maybe even reverse.
I'm walking away feeling so informed and empowered. What a great way to wrap up this deep dive. Until next time, everyone, stay curious, stay informed, and keep taking care of yourselves.
谢谢收看，健康生活，关心您的生活健康，请订阅、点赞及转传。